Hi guys, good morning and welcome to this session. This is Primus Learning, and the topic for our discussion is how to prepare for an AWS Solutions Architect interview or a DevOps technical interview. So these are a few points that are very, very important in terms of preparing for AWS Solutions Architect interviews, so technical interviews. The very first thing you want to take into consideration is that you're preparing for, to talk about a solution. You want to prepare to talk about a solution that the individual services that you've studied will bring to the client, will bring to the person interviewing you. The person coming to interview you has something in mind. They are building a solution. They're trying to build something. And so your contribution will not just be using services. So you don't want to study as though, hey, they are separate services. You just go study an EC2 instance, go study how S3 works, go study how Lambda works, go study how this works. Good to know those things, but that is not all about it, right? So you have to prepare for a solution. You're preparing to be able to talk about a solution that you can build. How would EC2 instances, S3, Lambda, Redshift, and all those services that are in AWS, how would they help you achieve or reach a particular solution? How would they help you help the client? So the client is looking for someone who is able to come in and say, hey, all right, if I use Lambda, S3, and maybe this other, maybe Athena, I'm able to build maybe a data pipeline for you. And if you're hiring, you're looking for someone who is capable of building a data pipeline, I am your person. So the very first thing is to build a solution, study to build a solution. So try to integrate services. So you want to know how AWS services, for instance, are integrated together, how they work together. You don't want to study isolated services, but you want to really be able to learn how those services work together. The next thing I would advise you to study or to prepare very well when you're going in for an AWS Solutions Architect interview is to learn Python and different packages in Python. These packages would help a lot when you're dealing with the solutioning part of AWS. So if you're building maybe data pipelines, you need to learn tools or packages like Boto3, Pandas, NumPy, PyAthena, and so many other packages out there. These are very, very important. You have to have an idea about these such that the person interviewing you understands that, hey, this person is able to come in and probably move data from one place to another. Maybe there's data in an AWS account somewhere or in a Redshift cluster somewhere, you can basically use Boto3 and maybe Pandas or data frames generally to move that data from one place, process it, and maybe store it in a data lake somewhere. So you want to have an idea of Python, and you want to make sure that some of the beautiful Python packages that we have out there are, top of your head. Another thing you need to prepare for is SQL. You cannot be a solutions architect and you are blank about SQL. You need the basics of SQL. So you use SQL in, moving, manipulating data, right? Either querying data to get data out of a database, either modifying the data to make sure the structure changes or something changes about the data, and so on and so forth. So you want to understand the basics of SQL. SQL joins, inner join, left outer join, right outer join. You want to know those differences. You want to know what a primary key is, a secondary key, and so on and so forth. Know the basics and fundamentals of SQL. They're very important, and interviewers will be keen to see somebody who understands how these things work together, and not just someone who is just who has just mastered a few things in AWS. Learn the different types of databases and how they work. These interviewers want to see if this person understands the component, one of the major components of IT, or of you know you know data. Generally, it's all about databases. Once you understand how databases work and the different types of databases, you can be able to talk about them. You can be able to, they can understand that, hey, this person will be able to, work with different types of databases out there. Uh, the different types include, I'm talking about the relational databases, for instance. You will learn about MySQL, you will learn about SQL Server, you will learn about MariaDB, you learn about Postgre, and so on. And so there are many of them. You just need to understand how they work and be able to distinguish them, because you have different use cases as a solutions architect, and you have to probably build a database. You have to move data from one place to another, migrate data, heterogeneous migration and homogeneous migration. All those things you need to understand the different types of databases to be able to do that. Then you also need to learn how data warehouses work and the difference between the traditional data warehousing solutions that we have out there, Informatica, ODI, and so on, and the databases or data warehouses like Redshift, and the advantages that the one, which is Redshift, has over the others. Redshift is an AWS solution, and it is so amazing. So you want to understand what the difference between a data warehouse and a database is. You want to understand how these function, the difference between the traditional ones and Redshift and others. So those are some of the basic things. You want also to learn how to build data pipelines. It will be a major part of the things that you'll be working on as a solutions architect, building pipelines, making sure data moves from one place to another. You want to really learn all of those. And then one thing also that you need to understand is the difference between front-end development, back-end development, and what happens at the front end and what happens at the back end, and all of those functions and that are part of front-end and back-end technologies. So you need to understand those. Once you study this way, trust me, you'll be good to go. For instance, if I want, let me share my screen here and just show you, demonstrate to you exactly what I'm talking about when I'm saying you have to study for you have to study services that are related, and that can don't just study individual services. So for instance, I want to learn about S3, right? I will not just learn S3 in as a service. I want to learn S3 in relation to others. How do I even move data from different places, from different data sources, for instance, to S3? So for instance, I will study in this architecture. This is a simple architecture diagram that we have out here. So let's say you have supply chain data somewhere in a data warehouse or in some storage somewhere, right? So you can begin to study about sources where data comes from. So that gives you the opportunity to learn about other sources like SAP, like HANA, like maybe so take for instance, data is coming from a product warehouse somewhere, and so it's being moved over to S3 through some processes. You want to understand, hey, what are some of the processes that can process data and make sure that data is usable, is user-friendly. So when that data moves, it moves to S3, and you want to study the different ways through which data moves, right? Is it data that moves incrementally? Is it data that moves like that you need to move just once? Is it data that comes in every day? Is it data that comes in millions of records? Is it data that comes in just 2 files? So you want to understand the source of the data. So studying just S3 is not important, right? But once you begin to study this way, you understand that you have to study where data comes from, the methods that you can use to move data to S3. That will bring you to things like Python and some of the Python packages that you have there, which means you have to learn about those packages and then learn how S3 itself works, because you need to learn how to store data, how to create buckets in S3, how to store data, how to version control that data, how to manage the different storage tiers. If the data that's coming in is maybe data that you just want to archive, then you learn how to archive data. Maybe it's healthcare data and it has all those compliance things like HIPAA and so on and so forth. Then you have to understand that you need to store that data for a certain period of time, maybe 7 years or 10 years or whatever. Then you know that you understand that you need to store that data in a different tier. And so you begin to study this thing with a context in your mind, like you're building a solution for people, you're resolving problems. And so you begin to learn again how this work in relation with Lambda functions, right? Because Lambda is something that it's just like a service that helps do something, a quick service that helps run functions. So some people would use S3 with Lambda, move data from S3 through Lambda functions to something else, maybe a data lake somewhere. A data lake is simply a bunch of S3 buckets, right? In the AWS context that we're talking about. So you can have a solution that moves data from one place to another, processes it through Lambda, and then stores the output in a data lake somewhere. Or you could have the same process, data that's stored in S3, and through glue crawlers, it's crawled, and through Athena, it's queryable through Athena. So the data is crawled through the glue crawler and catalog. So a catalog of that data is formed, and it becomes available through Athena, and then with an Athena connector. So through Athena, you can actually store the data in S3, and with an Athena connector or something, you can actually visualize the data through QuickSight, to Tableau with an Athena connection, or even expose it as an external table in Redshift. And through Redshift Spectrum, you're able to query that data just as you query any relational data database, right? So you can study, just with the S3 idea, you can actually study all of these things as a solution. So this is a solution that you see most people out there, most clients out there looking to implement. And if you study for this and you simply explain this to the interviewer, they will be amazed and they want to follow up with questions about this. And your interview may end up just being about this, right? So you want to study with a solution in mind. You want to prepare for a solution and not just study services as services. These are a few points that you can consider while preparing for an AWS Solutions Architect position. There is the DevOps part, which I've not dwelled on so much here. And it's the same thing. You want to study for a solution in terms of DevOps, right? Hey, you're doing deployments. You've done a deployment. What type of deployment have you done from end to end? Maybe the developers that are working in a team, you are in a 5-person team, developers work, push code out there to GitHub. And then you want to talk about the process from GitHub, right? You're the one who takes the code from GitHub and makes sure that that code is available to the front end people, or is available to the user interface that needs or production, right? User interface to production. So how do you do that? How do you move from one place to another? So you want to talk about maybe a pipeline that you've built, a CI/CD pipeline that's a continuous integration, continuous deployment or delivery pipeline that you've built, how you would build that, and with what tools you're able to build that. You don't just want to talk about Jenkins. You want to talk about other solutions and other things. There are things like GitHub Actions that's so good. Why would I be using a server when there's GitHub Actions? And other things, maybe AWS native tools like pipeline, code star, code commit, and so on and so forth. So you want to study for a solution and not just study individual services. Anybody can study individual services, but once you are focused, you're studying to provide a solution to your clients, they will be more interested in you and you'll be a hireable person. I just wanted to bring you these few points, and thanks for listening. Please subscribe to our channel for many other interesting videos that will be coming up. Thank you and have a great day.